This all began one restless night when, as usual, sleep came reluctantly. I found myself dreaming in such vivid detail that waking felt like stepping out of a movie. The dream unfolded on a familiar street corner near my apartment, a place I passed every day without much thought. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and a chilly wind swept through the empty sidewalks. It was dusk, the fading light casting long shadows, and the street lamps flickered unhesitantly. In the dream, I stood at the corner waiting for the pedestrian signal to change. Across the street, a small cafe was closing up, its neon sign buzzing faintly. I noticed a man crossing hurriedly, carrying a briefcase, his coat flapping behind him. Suddenly, a car came rushing down the lane, tires screeching on the wet pavement. The vehicle lost control, skidding toward the man. I tried to shout a warning, but no sound came out. The car struck him, and everything blurred, screams, breaking glass, reflections in puddles. What unsettled me most were the details. The car was a dark blue sedan, the driver's face obscured by the glare of the headlights. The man wore a beige trench coat and a red scarf that fluttered like a warning flag. The street clock on a nearby pole read exactly 6:17 p.m. I remember the smell of rain mixed with exhaust fumes and the distant sound of a siren growing louder. I jolted awake, heart pounding and palms sweaty. The room was dark, silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. For a moment, the images lingered, so real I could almost feel the cold wind on my skin. I shook my head, telling myself it was just a nightmare born from worries about my busy day ahead. But the next morning brought something that chilled me to my core. Over breakfast, my phone buzzed with a news alert. A hit-and-run accident had occurred the previous evening at the exact street corner from my dream. A pedestrian had been hit and seriously injured. The report described the victim wearing a beige trench coat and a red scarf. The time of the accident was exactly 6:17 p.m. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe properly. The details matched perfectly: the man, the place, even the time. I kept rereading the article, hoping my mind was playing tricks, that it was some bizarre coincidence. But the images from the dream remained etched in my mind. Later that day, I called my closest friend, trying to make sense of it all. "You're not going to believe this," I said, voice trembling. I recounted the dream in painstaking detail, describing the scene, the colors, the sounds, even the smell. He was silent for a few seconds before replying. "That's really eerie. But dreams can be strange like that, mixing memories and fears. Maybe it's just coincidence." I wanted to agree, but a knot of anxiety had already formed deep in my chest. I spent the day replaying the dream, searching for any cracks or inconsistencies that might explain it away. Yet, every element was precise, too precise to be random. That night, I found myself lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the uneasy feeling. As sleep pulled me under, I wondered if the dream had been some kind of warning, or worse, a glimpse into a reality I was powerless to change. The air grew colder as I drifted into another restless sleep, the street corner and the injured man lingering at the edge of my consciousness, whispering questions I had no answers for. After that first dream came true, I felt the need to share what I had experienced with someone close. Sitting across from my sister over coffee the next afternoon, I hesitated before recounting the details of the dream and the accident that had followed. Her eyes widened as I described the street corner, the exact time, and the man's red scarf fluttering in the wind. I could tell she wanted to believe me, but struggled against the skepticism that crept into her voice. "Are you sure it wasn't just a coincidence?" she asked gently, stirring her drink. Sometimes our minds weave stories from bits and pieces we've seen or heard without realizing it. I nodded, knowing she was right to question. Still, the precision of the dream haunted me. The way every detail lined up with the news report left little room for doubt. I told her I had never been to that cafe before that night, nor had I noticed the clock on that pole until the dream made it impossible to ignore. She sighed and warned me not to let this obsession consume me. Over the following days, I found myself hyper-aware of my dreams. Each night, I lay awake longer, fearing what visions might come next. I started keeping a notebook by my bed, scribbling down fragments and images the moment I woke. Writing became a desperate attempt to capture fleeting memories before they slipped away, lost to the fog of sleep. One night, the pattern repeated, and the weight of it crushed me. I dreamed of a close friend, someone I'd known since childhood, standing on the edge of a bridge, looking down at the dark water below. The sky was an ominous shade of orange, like a warning flare. I tried to call out to her, but my voice was swallowed by the wind. The scene shifted, and I saw her falling, her body hitting the water with a sickening splash. Panic flooded me as I woke, heart racing, sweat cold on my skin. I debated whether to tell her about the dream. The fear of seeming paranoid or intrusive held me back. But the vision lingered, growing heavier each day. Eventually, I confessed everything, trembling as I spoke. She listened quietly, eyes searching mine for signs of madness or deceit. "I don't know what to say," she finally said. "It sounds terrifying, but I can't believe something like that would happen." Her disbelief stung, but I understood. Who wants to accept that a dream might be a premonition? Still, I begged her to be careful, to avoid the bridge that weekend. She laughed it off, but the unease between us lingered. The anxiety gnawed at me. I questioned my sanity, wondering if I was reading too much into random nightmares. Yet, the coincidence of the first dream pushed me to pay closer attention. I started looking for signs, patterns in my sleep that might hint at future events. Each morning, I flipped through my journal, trying to piece together fragments of images, colors, and emotions. Sometimes I found connections, news stories that echoed my dreams, conversations that mirrored the scenes I'd witnessed in sleep. Other times, I dismissed the dreams as mere fragments of stress or memory. My family noticed my growing obsession. My mother asked if I was all right, concerned by my distracted demeanor and the way I flinched at sudden noises. My father tried to reassure me, suggesting I see a counselor or at least take a break from the late nights and constant note-taking. But I couldn't stop. The dreams felt like warnings I couldn't ignore. One evening, I dreamt again of the man from the first vision. This time, he was in a hospital bed, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Machines beeped steadily in the background. I saw a woman sitting beside him, holding his hand and whispering words I couldn't hear. The scene was suffused with a quiet sorrow that settled deep in my chest. I woke with a start. The image burned into my mind. I searched the news for updates, hoping for some sign of recovery or at least acknowledgement. But nothing appeared. The man's name was never released, and the story faded from the headlines. The silence felt like a betrayal. Had I imagined it all? Was I chasing shadows? The uncertainty made me feel isolated, as though I was the only one caught between two worlds, the waking and the dreaming, without a guide. Days later, another dream shattered what little calm I had left. I saw a colleague at work, someone I interacted with regularly, trapped in a burning building. Flames licked the walls, smoke thick and suffocating. I tried to reach her, but the heat pushed me back. Her face was etched with terror as she called out for help. I woke drenched in sweat, the acrid smell of smoke lingering in my nostrils. The next morning, I hesitated but decided to warn her. I pulled her aside quietly at the office and told her about the dream, urging caution. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're joking, right?" she said with a nervous laugh. "Maybe lay off the late-night horror movies." Her dismissal stung, but it was understandable. Who wants to believe that someone's dreams might predict danger? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the dream was more than a nightmare. It was a message. That afternoon, an alarm blared through the building. A fire had broken out in the neighboring office space. Evacuations started immediately, and though the flames never reached our floor, the panic was real. My colleague was shaken but safe. When I approached her later, she looked at me with new eyes, equal parts disbelief and gratitude. "Maybe you're onto something," she said quietly. I wasn't sure whether to feel comforted or more frightened. The pattern was undeniable. Dreams that seemed impossible were unfolding in reality around me. But why me? And what did it all mean? The growing anxiety tightened its grip on me. I found myself retreating from social events, afraid that nightmares could reveal dangers I couldn't control. I stopped sharing my experiences with most people, fearing judgment or ridicule. Still, a small part of me clung to hope that these dreams might serve a purpose, that by paying attention, I could protect myself and those I cared about. But the weight of the unknown pressed heavily. Each dream became a question without an answer, a riddle I couldn't solve. And with each passing night, I braced myself for what might come next. I realized that simply remembering my dreams wasn't enough. I needed to capture every detail, every emotion, before it slipped away like sand through my fingers. So I began keeping a dream journal, a battered notebook I kept on my bedside table. The moment my eyes opened, I reached for it, trying to write down everything I could recall before the memories dissolved into the fog of waking. The pages quickly filled with fragmented images, colors, sounds, and feelings that felt more urgent than ever. With the journal came an obsession. I tried to analyze each entry, searching for patterns or warnings buried beneath the surface. I marked dates, times, and locations, cross-referencing them with news reports and conversations. Sometimes the dreams seemed like random nightmares born from stress. Other times, they felt like cryptic messages, impossible to ignore. One morning, a particular dream shook me deeply. I saw a neighbor from my apartment building, a woman I exchanged pleasantries with occasionally, caught in a sudden car accident. The scene was vivid. The screech of tires, the crunch of metal, her body thrown against the windshield. The sky was overcast, rain slicking the streets. I woke with a pounding heart, a cold sweat on my forehead. Driven by a mix of fear and responsibility, I tried to warn her. I found her in the lobby later that day and hesitated before speaking. "Please be careful driving today," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She smiled politely, thanking me but brushing it off as an odd comment. I wondered if she thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. But the image haunted me, so real it felt like a memory instead of a dream. That evening, I checked the local news obsessively, hoping to see what I prayed wouldn't be there. Hours passed, and no accident was reported. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The next morning, as I stepped outside, I overheard neighbors whispering about a serious crash just a block away. A woman matching my neighbor's description had been hit by a careless driver who fled the scene. She was in critical condition at the hospital. The coincidence was unbearable. I felt both helpless and responsible, as if my dreams were warnings I couldn't fully interpret or stop. I kept writing, trying to understand the meaning behind these visions, desperate to find a way to prevent more tragedies. I began experimenting with ways to influence my dreams, hoping that if I could control them, I might change the outcomes. I read about lucid dreaming techniques, focusing on awareness during sleep, repeating affirmations before bed, and visualizing safe scenarios. Some nights, I tried to steer the dream's direction, but the visions remained stubbornly vivid and unyielding. One night, I dreamed of a fire, this time in my own apartment building. Thick smoke filled the hallways, fire alarms blaring, people shouting and coughing. I saw myself rushing to warn my neighbors, pounding on doors, guiding them to safety. The fear was suffocating. Waking from that dream, I felt compelled to act. I gathered my neighbors the next day and suggested a fire drill, shared emergency exits, and ensured everyone knew how to respond. Some were skeptical, others grateful, but most took the idea seriously. Weeks later, a small electrical fire broke out on the third floor. Thanks to the preparation, residents evacuated calmly, and no one was hurt. The dream had been a warning, and I had managed to change its course. That success brought a bittersweet sense of hope and dread. If some outcomes could be altered, why couldn't all? But with every effort, others still slipped through my fingers. My family's reactions deepened the emotional turmoil. My mother embraced me with concern, offering comfort and support when I shared my fears. She encouraged me to seek help, suggesting therapy to cope with the anxiety that was beginning to consume me. My father was more distant, dismissing the dreams as stress-induced fantasies. "You're letting this get to your head," he said one evening, frustration evident in his voice. "Dreams are just dreams. You need to live in the real world." His words stung, widening the rift between us. I felt caught between their opposing views, struggling to find balance. A particularly harrowing dream ratcheted the tension even higher. I saw news footage of a devastating car crash involving a close friend's younger brother. The scene was raw and heartbreaking. Flashing lights, paramedics rushing, a mother's anguished cry. I woke trembling, tears streaming down my face. I immediately called my friend, unable to hold back the warning. "Please, tell him to be careful driving," I begged. She listened quietly, then said, "You sound scared. I'll tell him, but you have to promise me you won't live in fear." I promised, though the dread inside me refused to ease. Days later, the news confirmed the accident. The brother had swerved to avoid an animal and crashed. Miraculously, he survived with minor injuries, but the incident shook the family deeply. That close call intensified my resolve and my fear. The dreams were not random. They were warnings, glimpses of possible futures. But even with the knowledge, I felt powerless to stop everything. At times, the lines between dream and reality blurred dangerously. I found myself questioning whether I was awake or still dreaming, struggling to distinguish between memory and premonition. Moments of déjà vu unsettled me, and I began to fear falling asleep altogether. One night, I dreamed of a dark figure standing outside my bedroom window. The man was motionless, his face hidden in shadows. I felt an intense cold, a suffocating presence pressing in on me. I woke paralyzed, heart racing, unable to move or call out. The fear lingered long after I regained control. I checked the window immediately, locked and secure. But the terror remained, a reminder that some things might be beyond control. The dreams continued, relentless and haunting. I tried to prepare, to warn, to intervene. Sometimes I succeeded, other times fate seemed immutable. Each morning, I returned to my journal, writing with trembling hands, hoping to decode the cryptic messages the night had left behind. The weight of responsibility was crushing, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. The blurring line between dream and reality gnawed at me relentlessly, and I knew I couldn't face this alone. I began diving into everything I could find on prophetic dreams, psychic phenomena, and the mysteries of the subconscious. Late nights were spent scouring forums, reading books by self-proclaimed seers, and watching documentaries that explored the thin veil between the waking world and the dreamscape. One name kept appearing: precognition. The idea that some people could glimpse future events through dreams or sudden visions fascinated me, but it also terrified me. Was I one of those rare few, burdened with a gift I never wanted? Or was my mind simply fracturing under pressure? Determined for answers, I sought out experts. I found a psychologist specializing in sleep disorders and paranormal experiences. Our sessions were a strange mix of skepticism and curiosity. She listened patiently as I recounted my dreams and their uncanny reflections in reality, then suggested grounding techniques to help separate fact from fear. You might be experiencing heightened anxiety that's shaping your dreams to feel more real, she said gently. Your brain is trying to process stress, but it's important to differentiate between what's imagined and what's real. I wanted to believe her, but the vividness of the dreams and their consequences refused to be dismissed so easily. Then, a particularly disturbing dream shattered what little calm I had left. I saw a secret, a hidden truth about someone close to me. In the dream, my best friend was standing in a dimly lit room, whispering on the phone with a voice that wasn't hers. Behind her, a man I didn't recognize paced anxiously, watching her every move. The scene shifted, revealing documents spread across a table, papers that hinted at betrayal, lies tangled deep within friendships I thought unbreakable. The air was thick with tension and fear. I woke with a racing heart, the images burned into my mind. The next day, I confronted my friend, unable to keep the nightmare bottled up. She looked startled, then defensive, denying everything with a tremor in her voice. "Where is this coming from?" she asked, eyes searching mine for explanation. "I don't know," I admitted. It just felt so real, like a warning. Our conversation ended awkwardly, the distance between us growing. I wasn't sure if the dream had uncovered a truth or simply twisted my fears. The line between dream and waking life became more fragile. There were moments when I questioned whether I was still asleep, trapped within some endless nightmare. Faces from dreams lingered in my peripheral vision. Sounds echoed where there was silence. I began to fear falling asleep, knowing the dreams might bring more horror or revelations I wasn't ready to face. One night, the dream invaded my bedroom in a terrifying way. I saw the dark figure again, the man outside my window, but this time he stepped inside. His presence was oppressive, filling the room with an icy chill. I wanted to scream, but was frozen in place, paralyzed as he moved closer. Suddenly, I woke, gasping for breath, my body drenched in sweat. The window was closed, the lock secure. But the fear stayed with me, like a shadow lurking just beyond the edge of vision. Days later, I discovered a strange connection between one of my dreams and reality that tipped me into paranoia. I had dreamed of a particular phrase, "Trust no one." The words echoed through the dreamscape, a warning shouted in hushed tones. When I mentioned it to a friend, they laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was meant for me. That afternoon, I overheard a conversation at work, whispers about plans and secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I felt eyes on me, suspecting betrayal in every glance. My mind spiraled, unable to separate real threats from imagined ones. The dream's influence seemed to reach beyond sleep, infecting my waking hours with doubt and fear. I withdrew further, avoiding social interactions, fearing what I might uncover or what others might discover about me. My journal became my only confidant, pages filled with desperate scribbles, frantic attempts to untangle nightmares from reality. One particularly harrowing night, I dreamed of a shadowy figure revealing a secret that shattered my world, a betrayal by someone I trusted implicitly. The dream ended with a chilling whisper, "You must decide who to believe." Waking, I found myself questioning every relationship, every word spoken. The paranoia was suffocating, a cage I couldn't escape. As days passed, I realized that the dreams weren't just warnings or glimpses of future events. They were mirrors reflecting my deepest fears and insecurities. The nightmare was not only about the outside world, but also the darkness within myself. Yet, despite the fear and confusion, I couldn't turn away. The dreams demanded attention, demanding that I face truths I might rather ignore. I resolved to keep searching for answers, no matter how unsettling. The line between what was real and what was dreamt had thinned dangerously, but somewhere within that fragile space lay the key to understanding, and perhaps survival. The dreams never truly left me. Even now, years later, their shadows linger at the edges of my mind, a constant reminder of the fragile boundary between what we call reality and the world that unfolds behind closed eyes. I find myself perpetually on edge, scanning my surroundings for signs or echoes from the night's visions. It's a state of vigilance born not from paranoia alone, but from the deep, unsettling knowledge that the veil between dream and waking life is thinner than most dare to believe. I often reflect on how these experiences reshaped my perception, not only of the world around me, but of my own mind. There was a time when I trusted my senses implicitly, when waking reality felt solid and unquestionable. Now, I'm left wondering how much of what I perceive is filtered through the prism of those dreams, how much is influenced by the weight of anticipation and fear. The anxiety lingers, a quiet hum beneath the surface of everyday life. I dread the night, knowing that sleep could bring more glimpses, more warnings, that I may or may not be prepared to face. Yet I cannot resist the pull, the need to understand what these dreams mean, to decipher their cryptic messages. Sometimes, I question whether these dreams were truly supernatural at all. Perhaps they were manifestations of intuition, subconscious pieces fitting together in ways my waking mind could not yet grasp. Or maybe they were the product of a mind unraveling under stress, seeking patterns in chaos. But then the memories come rushing back, the precise details that matched reality, the feelings so intense they defied explanation. And I am reminded that something beyond logic was at play. I remain watchful, attuned to the signs that might herald a new vision. I keep my journal close, its pages filled with fragments of past dreams and the growing hope that someday I'll find the key to unlocking their meaning. I have shared parts of this journey with a few trusted friends, those who listen without judgment and offer support in the quiet moments between fear and hope. Still, the full truth remains locked away, a secret I carry alone, as much a burden as a gift. There are nights when sleep comes easily, and the dreams are benign, mere shadows of past fears fading into the background. But those nights are rare. More often, I lie awake, heart pounding, waiting for the next vision to break through the darkness. The mystery remains unresolved, a haunting presence in my life. I am left to live with the questions, to walk the thin line between dream and reality, knowing that the next glimpse might change everything once again.